Do you struggle with drinking and you're wondering what it would be like, how life would be if you would stop drinking? Here's my story. It's a little long, so just listen to it as a podcast, and hopefully there are going to be some insights for you, some little seeds I could plant maybe in your life, so that you could reflect on it. And of course, every story is different, but here's mine. And maybe it'll help. So first and foremost, let me explain what addiction actually is, because I think a lot of people struggle with that term. There's a lot of taboo and a lot of heaviness to the term. It's only been very recent that it has been acknowledged as a disease. It's a chronic disease. It's not something you can get rid of very easily. And it's something that you can be born into or something that you have learned. And let me just explain a little bit further. Someone does not choose to become an addict. It just happens to you. So if you are the lucky person who has a certain type of coping mechanism, which is generally by escaping things. So if you're feeling certain types of emotions and you have a tendency to not really want to face them, one of those coping mechanisms can be to go and drink, gamble. It could be sex, it could be dating, it could be love, gaming, anything, shopping, anything. And I think a lot of people have it. A lot of people have that type of coping mechanism. Some people go really deep in it, end up on the streets homeless, and some people know how to handle it a little better. But I think it's good to acknowledge that this is a very, very common thing. I don't think the taboo is very helpful when it comes to addiction, because it's all around us. It's way more in our surroundings than we think. Also, I think it's important to make it less of a taboo, because I think most people are very ashamed of it and don't seek the right help just because there's a lot of taboo. And at the same time, the fact that no one really speaks about it makes it easier to fall into addiction because, for example, within the music scene, I'm a DJ, so I know all about it. And if you're not using drugs generally, in the music scene, I would say you might be seen as not necessarily part of the gang, I guess. Like a lot of creatives and just people who like to go out and party, like to use drugs. It's just part of the scene. It's part of the experience. It gives you an edge. It makes you an interesting person who's trying things out, and makes sense. But what happens if you are that type of person with that exact coping mechanism and you try drug once? What's going to happen if you can't control yourself? Are you going to talk about it with your friends? If you have the right friends, amazing. But I think there's still some type of taboo around it when it comes to addiction. For a lot of people, it's very difficult to come out and explain that they have difficulties with drug or alcohol abuse. One of those people was my brother. He was also going out a lot, got into doing drugs recreatively, and then realized that he could not stop himself, basically. It went on for years and years and years and years. Of course, it's not like it happens from one day to another. It increasingly becomes worse. That's why it's called a chronic disease, because, and for example, an alcoholic doesn't decide when he's like a college student that he's going to be an alcoholic later. That no one becomes an alcoholic overnight. That happens over a time course of years and years and years and years. And that's why alcohol abuse and alcoholism is so fucking scary, because it takes so long before you realize that you're an alcoholic that you're already very deep in it before you can realize that you're one. It's also so socially accepted that it makes it very, very difficult to see that line of where are you in trouble and where are you still kind of drinking recreationally. Anyways, so at one point my brother decided to quit after a lot of trial and error. Went to rehab, which is something that I think is so brave, because imagine realizing you have a problem, going to rehab. There's so much shame and taboo around that. But anyways, I went to this family day to visit him, and they explained a little bit about addiction and stuff. And whilst they were explaining about it, I realized how much of the same coping mechanisms I have as my brother. And just like as a little side note, I have a dad who is an alcoholic. So, 1 + 1 is 2, I guess. I've never been like an insane heavy drinker. I would go out like once or twice. Maybe like during the week, I would go out for 3 drinks or something. And in the weekend, I would probably go out and dance and maybe drink like 5 beers or something. But I was getting to a point where there was a lot of stuff going on in my life that were really testing kind of my limits. I noticed that I had a tendency to generally just escape a little bit. And for me, it was in a lot of things, not only just drinking, but generally I needed to have an exciting life all the time. I was never really content with the reality of things or with just like a mundane type of life. I always needed like more, like excitement, like a little self-destructive behavior sometimes when things would get too boring or something. I would just like maybe do something crazy, I don't know how to explain it. Just like stuff that you can tell your friends and be like, guess what happened? That type of vibe. After my brother went to rehab, my dad also went to rehab. And from all the people that I know that have a drinking problem, I would have never thought that my dad would have decided to quit drinking. Like, no way. I thought he was ever going to quit. But he did the same thing. So my brother gave the right example. Once they both were on the right track again, I was still drinking. And my grandma passed away. And I think at that point, I was going out maybe every week. And I knew that intuitively there was a problem that I was really escaping. And let me give you a little bit of like an example of what my life was looking like at that time. I would literally work every night that I would go home from work. I would just sit on my phone, do nothing. I would feel so tired. And then in the weekends, I would go out. Like, I wanted to stay until the end so that I could like take as much as I could from the night, I guess. Then I would have a hangover, a lot of anxiety. It would take me a couple of days before I would feel like myself a little bit again. But then by the time I felt normal again, I would go back to drinking and party. So I was in this constant loop of feeling like your life is just passing by in front of you and you're not actively living it. And so one day around the time that my grandma passed away, I was with my dad on the phone and I was telling him about this. And of course, I was learning a little bit more about what they learned about rehab and stuff. And the more they were talking about it, the more I seemed really interested. I was like, damn, like these people, like they go to meetings where you have people who just talk about their life and share whatever they're dealing with. And it can be anything. Like they're just like, they have a community of people who can just listen to them. They just share how their day was. And you have people who listen to them and then they talk to them about it. I don't know. It just seemed like so, and it's free. It's just like a really warm community you can go to and you can talk about life to these people. And the reason why this is so important, especially for an addict, is the following. To understand addiction a little better, you have to understand that it's a coping mechanism. So it's really a way to flee day-to-day emotions, generally. Generally, a lot of people with ADHD also struggle with addiction because we feel emotions just way more than the most normal people, I guess. And the thing with this is that once you tend to go into addiction mode and escape mode, you tend to be out of connection with people because you're always kind of like looking for something to fill your gaps. But you're not really there. You're not really in connection. And connection is the antidote to addiction. I'll repeat it. Connection is the antidote to addiction. And the reason why is that a lot of times when you're sitting with your emotions and you don't really know how to handle them, instead of going away, sharing them with people and talking about it with people has proven time and time again to work. And it takes away the feeling of, oh, I need to get my shot or my use or my little sniff or my drink or whatever. And so once you notice that, once you understand that it's not even the substance that you're trying to use, it's not even about that. It's about you trying to flee a certain type of emotion, a certain type of feeling, a certain type of boringness or whatever. You're trying to escape your life for some reason. And I know it's not that easy to say, hey, you're escaping your life, go and connect with people. For a lot of people, that's not that easy. But why it is so important, it's important to connect with people who are ex-addicts, for example, because they're the only ones who really understand you. Because basically, like, the behavior, this whole behavior, there are a lot of like behavioral things that people who struggle with addiction or with drinking out of control, or not even out of control, but just generally trying to escape their life, basically have people who have this coping mechanism. I don't want to say people who are addicts, because we cannot say like everyone is I find it difficult even to say that I used to be an addict, because I don't think I actually was, since I wasn't drinking that much. But I can say I have the same coping mechanism as my brother and my dad, who are addicts. So I think if I would have continued drinking, I might have gone down the same path, but I haven't. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be working on that coping mechanism. And the things that under this coping mechanism are a lot of things. It's not only just trying to escape your emotions, but it's also, there are a lot of ways you can escape your emotions. You can do it by feeling really sorry for yourself. There's this saying called pour me a drink. And it's so good, because it's basically what a lot of people do, right? It's like a lot of people have difficulty realizing what their influence is in their life, and they basically seek it out of themselves all the time. It's everyone's fault except for theirs. And so it's a good way, especially if you have an addict brain, it's very convenient to think this way. Because if it's everyone else's fault and you're the one who's being treated the wrong way all the time, it gives you another reason to drink. So if you realize that you're behaving a certain type of way and you learn this new language of behavior, which is not something you learn overnight, it's something you learn over years, but you need a community of people who have the same type of coping mechanisms, who are sober, who can kind of like tell you, hey, I see what you're doing at the moment, but we all know that you're just being a little bit of an addict at the moment. And that's basically what a lot of people cannot do, who don't have that experience, who don't have that gene or that coping mechanism, and they take everything word by word. I think people with this coping mechanisms are generally much more sensitive than most people. We just feel a lot more, and we don't know how to handle those feelings. And I think we can get hurt by other people much more easily. Generally, I think a lot of us are not even that social as we think we are, and we're seeking that type of connection and love that we probably didn't have in childhood or generally by drinking. And I think that's where it's wrong, because the next day you're gonna feel anxiety, and you might have done some things that you regret the next day, and you probably also did not connect in the proper way. So when I quit, I decided to still go out. At first, didn't, because I quit in February. So the first months weren't necessarily that busy, especially like party-wise or festival-wise or whatever. I remember the first time I went out was with King's Day, and that was really difficult and scary. But I called someone right before I went to meet up with my friends, someone who also was sober for a long time. And I seek that connection in order to feel a little bit stronger again. And then I went and celebrated King's Day with a lot of reassurance, I guess. I think the way I have been able to be sober for more than a year now is just by really seeing it as something I do every day. So I just say like, just for today, and then the next day we'll see. And then whenever you get another chance to stay sober, you stay sober. And it makes it just way easier to handle. And if I would tell myself, don't drink ever, I don't think I would have ever quit. Just the idea, especially in the beginning. You're like, what? No more drinking ever? But then you realize life is so much nicer. It's so much nicer. It's so much better. You have more energy. My sleep is, I just sleep a whole night. I go to bed. I wake up in the morning. I don't remember what I did. I sleep, I used to wake up every night, once or twice. And now and I wasn't even drinking that much. Can you imagine? I was just going out in the weekend. And every night I would wake up at least once. So it has an effect. It does have an effect on your body. It also takes like 3 months until your brain is recalibrated. So in the beginning, it's going to be very, very hard for you because your brain is kind of like going into this dip because it's not getting the dopamine that it used to get from the alcohol every weekend. But then at some point after those 3 months, which are like, it's kind of long. That's why a lot of people cannot stick it out or stick throughout it. I don't know how you say it. And then afterwards, you go into this, like they call it the pink cloud, because you feel so strong and so nice that you quit and you feel like over the moon and you're like, yeah, life can begin now. I love it. But that's a kind of like a dangerous moment because you feel a little bit too powerful. And that's when there is a moment where you're like, maybe one drink is fine because I have control over myself. And yeah, that's how most people fall back into drinking. But if you stick that out as well, then after a couple of months, you might hit a wall. So you're doing well, but you're going to hit a wall at some point because life is not, if you don't work on yourself, if you just cold turkey quit drinking and you didn't do anything about that whole coping mechanism that I was talking about, then you're going to hit that wall like face plant that wall. Because you're going to realize, oh yeah, life is still difficult. It's actually not easier at all now that I quit drinking. Your friend, you're going to realize that friend, that like coping drink, that little friend is gone. So what the fuck are you supposed to do now, basically? Especially if you haven't really been doing the work. So that's why it's so important that I advise, if you quit drinking, it's really important that you find a way to handle those emotions, because they're gonna come up. They're definitely gonna come up. You're gonna feel your emotions a lot more intensely, which is good. And you have to go through it first. And at some point, it's gonna be more mellow. But yeah, make sure you journal. Make sure you go to a therapist if you need one. If you have like a lot of stuff to work through. Talking with people who have the same experiences is just, again, very, very important. And I know for a lot of people it's so difficult to call someone out of the blue for no reason, just to talk, is really, really difficult. But it's so necessary, because 99% of the times they're gonna say something that you needed to hear in that moment, and it's gonna get you out of it. Also, something that I haven't mentioned yet is the aspect of a higher power. So it's like, I think for a lot of people, and for me as well, in the beginning, I was like, what do you mean a higher power? Do I need a higher power in order to not drink or like be able to stay sober for a long time? I'm not saying you do, but I think it's important to find something that's a little bit more important than yourself, so that you can understand that you're not that big as you thought. Because if you were that big, you probably were able to quit, but you can't. I think it's really good to be a little humble, and especially for, as I said, like addicts, the way they are, the way they think, it's very important for them to realize that they need to learn that they cannot control life. Because I think one of the things with like that escaping mechanism is that we feel like life is completely out of control, because we have zero control over our emotions, and we have zero control over how to process them. And so the only thing that we have control over is by going out of our way to find something to soothe us. And that gives us a certain sense of control. But unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. And life is very uncontrollable. Things just happen sometimes. Sometimes you just get a slap in the face. It just feels weird if I would drink now. It would just feel like such a shame. I would be like, what am I trying to sedate, I guess? Because I can have fun with my friends sober. Like, there's nothing for me to sedate, I guess. I know for a lot of people it's just to let loose. But what are you wanting to let loose from? Once you start like facing these things all the time, then life is generally much more relaxed than you think. It's generally more stressful when you're trying to let loose more often. I think for me, there was also a part that was really difficult. For example, I met some new people that I found very cool and they were talking about drugs. And I remember being like, oh shit, now they think I'm a nun or something, or like I'm a very boring type of person who's always drinking tea in her house and doesn't have any life experience. And she's this boring girl. And I remember I felt the need to kind of like let them know that I have had those experiences, you know? And I remember going home and I was like, what the fuck was that? You know, why did I do that? And I remember talking to someone about this and they were like, but do you know who's actually the boring one here? That's them, because they have the same life. They're doing the same things over and over and over. They're not breaking any cycle. They're basically just like, it's so easy to go out and drink or to go out and do drugs. Like, the hard part is literally taking life by the balls, facing your stuff, and then take control by doing the stuff you want to do, you love to do. When you process your emotions, you create so much space that you can start doing the things that you've always wanted to do, and you don't feel like you have to be motivated to do it. You're actually motivated because you've created all that space. Oh yeah, and about the higher power thing, I think it's really important to have that, because once you realize that you don't have any control over your life, basically, like life is completely out of control, things just happen to you, then you can basically trust in something that it's going to happen for the best. And so I have some type of like higher power, which is just the universe. And I believe that whatever happens to me is supposed to happen in the exact way that it's happening. Happening. Like, you have to be really, really honest with yourself. Like, are you trying to sedate a certain feeling? Are you trying to run away from something? Or are you trying to control something? Are you trying to push a certain outcome from someone? Or are you like forcing something? Generally, when you force something, you can just like say bye to it. Like, for me, like in my experience, nothing that I have forced has ever been good for me, ever. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to work for things, but intuitively you can feel when there's a moment where you can keep pushing, but it's just not gonna happen. Sobriety gave me a lot of more capabilities to listen to my own intuition better. So it's basically taken away all of the blurriness, and it's made everything clearer, which allows me to listen to my own intuition better, which allows me to make better choices for myself, and so on and so on and so on. But it's not easy, and I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm also not saying that for a lot of people, I was lucky to move to another city and have to start all over again. For a lot of people, it's very difficult. Like, they have to change friends, they have to, so all right, so I think I've shared like a shit ton of information at the moment. It went from here to here to here to here to here. I hope it had some type of sense for people, and yeah, man, I wish you all the best on this journey. It's not an easy journey, so please let me know if there's anything I can do. DM me, send me a message. We need to support each other. Again, the antidote to addiction is connection. So please, let's be there for each other and be kind. Bye.